Brawl Stars does have a lot of abilities, but it could have more. So my first idea for today's video would be a 3-hit combo. So if you hit your first and your second attack, your third attack would do something crazy. It could truly be anything, like I don't know, a stun, more damage, burning, slow, anything truly. And this would work very similar to how Guz's passive works, but it would have a very important difference, which is if you miss any of the attacks of the combo, you lose the combo. So in a certain way, this could be a high skill ability, which is good. The game is kind of needing more one of those, honestly. So I feel like this could be applied to so many brawlers, and it generally could be so versatile, and it all comes down to what the brawler is meant to do and how do you really want to apply it. Next on the list, we have abilities that activate when you reach a certain amount of HP. Like Clash Royale does have a lot of those, and actually we do have like what? 2 abilities like that in Brawl Stars, and very ironically, the character that does have an ability like that, it's the brawler you start the game with, which it's Shelly. Like, abilities when just appear once when you reach a certain amount of HP honestly have a lot of potential. And the way that Shelly's second star power works, it's very simple, very easy to understand, and honestly very good. It could be applied to a lot of different characters, like an assassin. When he drops his HP, he just gets more ammo, for example. Obviously this would be very strong, especially if it was just a passive, but you get the idea. And I don't know why Brawl Stars isn't adding any more of these abilities. Like we have Rico and Shelly, we could very well get a new one of these, honestly. Next on the list, we have immunity to crown control abilities. Now the only character that has this, it's Frank, and it's a gadget, and it only lasts 1.5 seconds. You can't even tell sometimes it's there if it was not for the very interesting animation that the gadget does have. But with that being said, there are a lot of characters that could use this very well, like Hank, for example. If he had any sort of crown control immunity, even if it was a gadget or a star power, I know for a fact that this would make Hank significantly stronger, especially if it was just a passive. But for example, another brawler that could use one of these abilities would most likely be Ollie. Because he does silence himself before applying the super, having a crown controlling immunity to just guarantee the hypnotize effect and the damage of the super would be extremely valuable. And I could see this mechanic being very good, and Supercell should really give more attention to this one, honestly. Next, we have our entirely first new mechanic, which would be some sort of super stealing mechanic. There isn't really any character that can just steal the enemy super, or even paralyze it. Cordelius can do that, but still, no one can truly steal super. And I could see that being an opportunity for an entirely new brawler. I mean, this is a mechanic that no brawler has, not even has a gadget or a star power at all. This would be entirely new, so I could see so many things. It's honestly Supercell's game, like, do whatever you do with this idea, honestly. Next on the list, we have KO effects. Like for example, when the giant skeleton on Clash Royale drops the bomb and that deals damage, that's a KO effect. You summon the bomb upon your death. And honestly, the fact that we don't have these on Brawl Stars, it's almost surprising. I say almost because there was actually a moment where Poco, when he died, he would just explode music and heal allies, which honestly it was kind of weird, but as a tank, it could make a lot more sense. Or for example, he could just, has a mythic gear, most likely, have the ability to drop his head once he died. It would make a little bit of sense. Yes, it would be very annoying, but if we're talking about sense, it would make it. But this is just an idea as well, and Supercell already tried it, so in comparison to a lot of the rest of the ideas, I have my doubts that these will ever come to the game, but I would really like to see just appear in the game like to one brawler, like even if it has a super or something, it would be fun. Next on the list, we have the ability to almost silence an enemy. Long before ODs and silence in general even became a thing, there was this idea that there could be a silence mechanic similar to the Cordelia's Shadow Realm effect. So the enemy could not use the super, neither could use gadgets or activate hypercharges. Now, considering that Cordelia's has that and the whole Shadow Realm thing has a super, I think that there is a good reason to it. Probably this ability has a super would be somewhat weak, so maybe it could just be a natural passive, like, I don't know, every 3 hits you connect, enemies around the area of you would just get these for 5 seconds or something. You just need to be a little bit creative on how this ability would appear, because I do see that the ability could be somewhat weak, but I would really like to see it coming to the game. Maybe even has a completely new brawler, who knows. Next on the list, we have a brawler that has 3 or 4 forms. Like, all of the brawlers that have a shapeshifter or just have more than one form, it just go and go back, go and go back. It's very repetitive. And a very interesting idea that could just be very simple would be the 4 elements of creation that were created a very long time ago. So, like you would swap between fire, electricity, earth, and ice. And your hypercharge could very simply be all of them together. As a new brawler, special legendary, I think that the 4 forms type of brawler could really be something very unique. Yes, maybe a little bit confusing, but I feel like it has a lot of potential, and the fact that we still don't have one of these, even though we already have so many brawlers that have like super transformations, it's honestly kinda crazy. Next on the list, we have overcharging your super. Now, because hypercharge is the thing, this idea is probably the second least possible thing to appear, but hey, who knows? The idea would be very simple. A character has a very weak super, but if you keep getting the super back, like charging it even more, the super would eventually become a menace to society. And truth being said, there are a lot of brawlers that could have a similar mechanic to this. Maybe Stu, for example. Gale could be another really good idea to implement this mechanic. I don't know, or maybe an entirely new brawler. There is a lot that you could do with this mechanic, defensive and offensive. So this ability on itself has a lot of versatility, and I really like to see it coming to the game, even if hypercharge is already a thing. I feel like they are different enough for them to be separate mechanics. Next on the list, we have an overheating mechanic. So if you ever played any sort of game with like technology weapons or something, usually those have like infinite ammo and you can shoot as many ammo as you want, but if you shoot for far too long, eventually the weapon just heats up and you can't attack for a massive amount of time. So the fact that we don't have this, it's kind of surprising. For example, Amber, like, you could give her more damage, please don't do that, but to compensate, you would have the overheat mechanic, and if you just shoot too many projectiles, like let's say 15 or maybe 12, you would overheat and silence yourself for like 2 seconds, for example. And this would be very unique, like probably add this to a new brawler. But another character that could use something similar to this would be Meg. Like, Meg is kind of boring, that's always been, but this mechanic would make sense because, I mean, it's a robot and it's very unique as well. Finally, Meg being somewhat unique, I could say. And now we have what's probably my favorite idea, which would be a counter super. Now, it would be very similar to Surge Gadget and Annie's Gadget, but even a little bit more skilled. So, for 1 second, if you received any damage, you would, number 1, receive 80% less damage, and you would immediately teleport to the enemy, dealing a massive amount of damage and potentially a stun. Now, obviously, this mechanic would be for a tank, or for a high HP assassin, similar to Buzz, for example. Or it could also be a Lily gadget, could also work very well, just like that. But I would really like to see this to a completely new character that would also be a tank. Like, you get the super from receiving damage, then on a split second you activate the super and just immediately teleport to the enemy team, dealing a lot of damage and having a lot of potential as well. I would really love to see this mechanic, and I actually hope they add it one day as a super, not as just a gadget. Because as a gadget, I mean, we kind of already had things like that. I really wanted to see a character that would have these as their just baseline mechanic. It would be really good. And there you have it, 10 new abilities that, in my eyes, Brawl Stars really needs to add to their game. This is just my opinion, and on top of that, there are so many more abilities that could be added to the game, and honestly, I cannot wait to see what Supercell comes up with. So, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked, do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see ya on the next video.